It's my pleasure to introduce our joyful gardener, and I say our very deliberately. Margaret contributes to the club in so many ways. She has been on the board in more than one capacity, including being club president for 2 years. Her former garden was on the garden tour more than once. She has presented to the club more than once. And a recording of her 2022 presentation, A Four-Season Cottage Garden, is available on our club website. She has contributed so much to the club. She's been gardening for nearly 50 years, and understandably, she finds that hard to believe. Those of you who know her may too. Her style is organic. She does not seek to impose a design or a landscape, but lets it tell her what it wants to be. And Margaret seeks joy in gardens. She believes this stems from her first experiences of gardens, grandma gardens that were rather haphazardly created and maintained, but full of wonders of leaf, flower, food, and decoration. She's just been telling me about some of the wonders in her new garden, so I think you'll probably get to hear some of those. At 78, Margaret is beginning to work on her fourth major garden on the south end of Orcas, and joy keeps her moving and dreaming. Margaret, thank you for being with us this morning to share that joy.
It's so good to be here. I love this club and I love the people in this club. I have not participated so much in the last 5 years because of the pandemic, and also because I was working at Girl Meets Dirt, putting labels on jars during the time of the meetings, so I wasn't able to attend. But anyway, I'm here today. Let me just talk a moment about the evolution of this talk. I've been traveling a lot in the last 2 years. My partner, who was a high school classmate, and I have traveled in France and England and Wales and Scotland and Mexico and short bit in Croatia. And so I thought, well, it'd be fun to do a presentation of the gardens that I saw there. But as I was going through my slides, I realized that the gardens that I love best are deeply, deeply personal gardens. I've been to some of the really fancy gardens in Blenheim Castle, for example, in Europe, but those that I prefer are, I hate to say granny gardens, but often like that, where there's a deeply personal mark. So I changed the title to The Joyful Gardener. And then as I went through 2,000 slides again and again and again and again, probably 11 times, then I saw themes develop. So this talk is very organic too. It wasn't planned ahead. I mean, it's organized, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to talk about, so I looked through the slides. Okay, so this to me is a joyful garden, a very joyful discover. This little girl, I think, is about 12 years old now, but gardens should inspire this, no matter what the age, from 1 to 100. And what are the qualities that actually do that? And we will talk about that. The gardens I love most are deeply personal expressions of your interest, your aesthetic, and your values. If that is your garden, it tells me how you like to spend your time. It highlights your special talents. It leads me into your imagination, and it tells me what's important to you, how you think and feel about nature, about people, about things. I want to walk into your garden and be delighted by what delights you. To discover your personal vision of Eden, to lift my arms and whoop for joy in your garden. And that's not an exaggeration. That kind of gardening is joyful gardening. So this is this is someone with his arms raised, whooping for joy in France, in the Lot Valley. An eccentric collector near some of the marvelous caves in southwestern France. This is a saguaro whooping for joy. And this is me whooping for joy last fall on the Isle of Skye with the old man of Store. You could only see the bottom of the rocks in the background. It ended up snowing. This is in November. It ended up snowing that day, but we were still whooping. So as I reviewed my slides and thought about history of gardening, these are the things that came out for me. They let their hearts be their guides. They make gardens that make them happy. They see that nature is a great coach. They seek out wild places and learn from them. They emphasize found materials in landscaping. They buy and adopt plants they love. They don't worry too much about whether these plants go together. I would say that plants, like your friends, if you like them, they'll probably like each other. You do have to know what kind of habitat suits them. But I've often started gardens with a plan, and it just so I could do that. They find or make garden decorations that express themselves, no matter how weird or wacky. They don't get too caught up in the how-to or perfection. Their style is more organic than engineered. They find their way as they go. And they invite friends and families and strangers into their gardens so they can be joyful too. Within joy in the garden, there are as many different styles as there are people. So, and your one style is not only a picture of you, but also a portrait of the landscapes that you buy or inherit. So I'm not saying that it needs to be one style, but that you style your garden for your own happiness. Let your heart be your guide. Above all, make a garden that makes you happy. What makes me happy? Seasons make me happy. We are so lucky to live someplace that has 4 distinct seasons. Dirt makes me happy, just touching dirt. Plants make me happy. Flowers make me happy. Birds and bees make me happy. Oh, I've got dirt twice. Dirt makes me happy. Dirt makes me happy. Oh, that's a good Freudian slip. I'm gonna, because I mentioned seasons, I'm gonna go through what is, well, it's nominally my garden now. My son and his family are now in my house that he helped me build almost 20 years ago on Orcas. In January, the first joy is the witch hazel. And I had started to attempt to collect license plates from all the states in the union. I thought I'd have them circling that garden. This is weird and wacky decoration, but I didn't want to cheat. Cheating would be to buy the license plates off the internet. I had to find them. So that project did not succeed. But anyway, it was fun. daffodils, narcissus make me happy. I think this is tete-a-tete, one of the earliest daffodils and a kind of miniature daffodil. And I taught literature for 20 years at a community college near Tacoma. So poetry is always in my head. So you're gonna get a little bit of that. Because when I'm in my garden, I'm commonly thinking or remembering poems from the past. The force that through the green pews drives the flower, drives my green age. Dylan Thomas, that is spring. That is spring. This incredible force. You can see tulips. I prefer the species tulips that not only naturalize, but hybrid tulips often don't last very many years, and these do and hybridize. I can't remember the species name, but you can see things just popping. This would be early May. And my gosh, daffodil blossoms. The scent, the look, so enchanting. I mean, excuse me. Apple blossoms. And the herb garden just beginning with dianthus. You can see the weird and wacky garden decorations, sweet peas. These are just things that bring me joy. Roses, I'm crazy for roses. And this is Munstead wood, a English rose, David Austin rose. Nasturtiums were one of my very first memories of the garden. Perhaps some of you have picked the flowers and then snipped off the end of the, I don't know what you call it in the back, and sucked out the, I don't know if it's pollen or juice anyway, just like a bumblebee. And garden paths have always fascinated me. I remember as a young child just walking paths to see what was next. Daisies, even though they're horrible spreaders, and that's the Alaskan Shasta daisy and Rudbeckia. And again, the license plates. These are moving through the season, so we're now into summer because I can see the echinopsis there, and there's bronze fennel, which can be a problem, but still I love the look of it, so I pull it a lot. And then vegetables, harvesting vegetables. Fall is, I think spring and fall are my two favorite garden seasons, and I love the dishevelment of fall. And which makes me think of one of my favorite poems, Delight in Disorder, by the English poet Robert Herrick. And you'll see his dates are almost Elizabethan, a little bit after. A careless, whoops, that means should be careless, right over there. A careless shoestring in whose tie I see a wild civility does more bewitch me than when art is too precise in every part. I love that wild civility. Again, you can see it. That's a Catinus, the smoke bush, a very favorite, and super easy to grow shrub. And honeysuckle and golden hops on the archway. And bringing inside the harvest sunflowers from your own garden. And if I get a volunteer fir tree, I let it grow for 3 or 4 years. And then I cut it down as a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. It's the little fir seedlings are so precious that I hate to pull them up. But I don't want a garden of fir trees, so this makes a nice compromise. The garden in winter again with snow, the silhouettes of the apple trees, and those have been pruned, so this is probably a February snow, I would guess. I don't know exactly which year, but look at that lace. So much pleasure in the seasons. Secondly, I look at nature, wild places. This is my son sitting on the little bay up on my dog, just to the left of obstruction past beach. Excuse me, I need to get some water. And just the simplest elements, which I will describe in a moment. This is from a beautiful story by Carson McCullers. A tree, a rock, a cloud. And I like how each one she punctuates as a sentence. And the story is very simple. It's an old man sitting in a diner, and he starts a conversation with a much younger man, a boy. And this old man has been unsuccessful with human love, particularly with a woman. So he wants to talk about love in simpler terms. Son, do you know how love should be begun? The boy sat small and listening and still. Slowly he shook his head. The old man leaned closer and whispered, a tree, a rock, a cloud. If we can love those, if we can start there, I think we can grow into more complex forms of love. This is my son again. Point him out right there on Madrona Point before it was closed for visitors. A tree, a rock, a cloud. Well, I don't see any clouds, but and our most exquisite of trees, beautiful glowing madrones. And rocks, I think this is on the far side of Cascade Lake with moss on them, ferns, trees again. This is the waterfall in the Coho watershed, which I love that hike up the that very narrow rock canyon there, inspiring. Our Indian Island, rocks, trees, clouds, logs. You know, the elements of a great garden are really quite simple. My son and what we call the bonsai tree on the southwest side of Cascade Lake. And then this is Watma Bay on Lopez Island, that large, huge rock wall on the north side of the bay is just one of our most stunning landscapes on the islands. And this is the Lake District of England. And I've always been drawn to austere places. And to see these mountains without much foliage on them is thrilling to me. And the orange in most of these pictures of the British Isles is actually bracken fern, which, you know, we often treat as an enemy, but my God, what color in fall. So this would have been this past November. I can't remember the name of that particular valley. I could if I had a map. This is Glencoe in Scotland. Some of you may have visited. It's a mountain pass in the Highlands. And there are actually three sisters, three peaks, and it's heart stopping. But again, just the simple element of rock and sky, and you can see cloud enveloping the top. This is near Glencoe in Scotland. And this is on the Isle of Skye. One of the Scotland, I think, is one of the wildest landscapes I have seen. I had always wanted to go there, and was thrilled to be able to do so last fall. And it was in November. We had hail, we had wind, we had snow, and I loved it all. It's just such a great time to travel, fall travel. And you don't have to worry about, we didn't plan much of anything. We'd wake up that morning and think, where do we want to go? Get a, hotel room in the morning. So we weren't tied to any kind of schedule. This is the hike up to the Old Man of Store, a very remarkable rock feature. I think this is past it. And then these are mountains on an island, which we have mountains on our island too. But there's something about, you don't expect mountain, and I think, I can't remember if this is Skye or Lewis, because we got out to the Outer Hebrides. This I know is the south end of Harris Island, which is essentially just rocks and pools and sea. Now we're in Arches National Park, and again, just the stunning quality of rock. And here is Canyon de Chelly, Spider Rock. I am thrilled by these colors, which we can create mostly in herb gardens here. These sagey greens, we can't do the red rocks really, but we can do the rest of it. And this is Steinbeck Canyon in Baja, near Loretto, just south of Loretto. In 1940, John Steinbeck traveled in a fishing trawler with a botanist, Ed Ricketts, all the way into Baja, and they did a lot of marine research. And his book of that trip is called The Log of the Sea of Cortez, which is a wonderful kind of naturalist description of the beauties of Baja, which is a place that I love. Deserts, another rustier landscape. This is also Baja. Those look like the Ocotillo cactus. I'm crazy for cactuses. I would grow them if we could. But again, rocks that have been shaped by erosion, northern Baja. So found materials for landscaping. We've seen how nature landscapes, and this of course is not like the stunning vistas we've seen, but a path and split rail fences as excuse me. I age, my voice isn't so strong. Ezra Richardson did my fencing for me almost 20 years ago, and I have been very pleased with it. And the paths are just pit run, which forms a fairly hard but gravelly surface. The weeds don't get through pit run as easily as they would 3/8 or 5/8 inch gravel. I'm a major opponent of weed plots, so try to do natural solutions. Again, just a simple gravel path, so this is here is, I think, 5/8 minus gravel. And a lot of these plants are volunteers. I did see the Love in the Mist, which is, that little flower, and the Alchemilla, lady's mantle, just seeds itself. I'm constantly pulling it out, so I'm always like, oh my gosh, people are actually buying that. Only buy one. The rest will take care of themselves. And I'm not sure where I got this peony. Many of my garden plants were given to me. I do have peonies from some of our deceased, kind of the grand matrons of gardening on Orcas, Emily Reed. I have some of her peonies. I have a tree peony from Hazel O'Brien. I have Crocosmia from Irmgard Connolly, and all these dear people are gone. But I still have them in my garden. So when people offer you plants, you might ask if they're invasive, because that's usually why they're invasive. But, you know, do say yes. I wouldn't say yes to lemon verbena. That was the worst one in my history. Here's just another example of a path with a deck chair that was given to me when I retired. I'm crazy for round rocks. And because we have a number of glacial erratic scenes around the island, because we were once a mile deep under ice. These are all rocks that were created as the glaciers retreated. And so they're very fun. And I would never let a round rock go. Just simple archways. The idea of moving from room to room in a garden is intriguing. I like to think about gardens the way young children do. And they're constantly looking for surprises. Again, gates and some of the, I didn't have money for garden sculpture, so I just collected rusty stuff. These are just rocks that I actually picked from the quarry and hauled when I first moved here in 2008, and to make terraces for vegetable gardens. And these are window wells that made nice little coal frames, excuse me, forgetting my words. And this is again in Baja near the town of Mulahay. What I love the way the Mexican people garden, because it's totally found objects. So rocks, and then you paint them white. And this is a church that was built in the colonial days, probably in the early 1700s, of course, with local rock. But look at the sculptural quality of the building and just a few simple cactuses. This is a house in France with just rocks in the garden. It's actually my partner's Norm's house. He's selling that now. I've only visited once, but I found what I love best about his place was gardening and cooking. He had to pull me off the mount, or off the hillside in front of the house. And the butter and the flour in France, nothing will go wrong with your baking. But it's 9 hours to France, and then quite a drive to southern France. And well, this sounds horrible, but the things that I love to do, I can do here. So it's just too much for us to keep that now. This is a long fence on the Isle of Skye, just rock. As you know, there are so many rock walls in the British Isles because clearing the fields for cultivation necessitated removing rocks and then placing them as fences. But whoops.
It'll come back up.
There we go.
Right.
Okay, this is a Roman spring that the Romans created near the Lot Valley in France, and just the simple beauty of that, 2,000 years later. And this is a shepherd's hut from created with rocks in France, where shepherds could take shelter in bad weather. This is a rock and then wattle, the woven, usually with willow fence at a garden in England. And look at the gorgeous mess. Look at the wild stability of that. Again in fall. This is in the Lakes District, just a fence and a rock and a hill and a sky, a rock, a tree, a rock. Just the invitation of a garden gate and a path. So our landscaping does not need to be elaborate. Again, a path. How can you not follow? The standing stones on Skye. These are probably around 4,000 years old, and you wonder the technology to move and erect those. Very thrilling. And this is my favorite kind of fence. This happens to be in California, but you see this fence all over in Mexico, where you just take sticks and run some wire. This is Carrizo National Monument, which is east in the mountains, kind of behind Morro Bay. And we did a road trip to Los Angeles in the last week of January this year. And we had sunny days every day that beautiful last week of January. And we had time and well, let's go up in those mountains. And it was marvelous. And here's some beautiful landscaping on Crescent Beach. When people have the energy to build these structures, it's so thrilling to see. And this is in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. You can see that somebody's just taken a log and hollowed it out and planted succulents. And it looks like a fruit tree as well, or a big tree. I'm not sure what. Buy and adopt plants you love. Don't worry too much about whether they go together. It will probably work out. And guess what? You can move them if it doesn't. So I'm going to seasonal again. I'm just going to review some of the plants that thrill me. Galanthus, snowdrops, and the Iris reticulata at the bottom. And the Iris reticulata is very, very short, usually not more than inches tall, but what a lovely greeting. And then the tete-a-tete daffodils again. This is February Gold, one of the earliest blooming daffodils, and I just got them at Costco. And they've been so resilient. This is one of my other favorite, the Poeticus, which come later, later April. And there is a native Poeticus as well. And then you can see the bluebells, the squill in the background. And daffodils, of course, and then visiting the Lakes District, we have to have William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. The thrill of seeing the daffodils around the little pond at Warm Valley Farm after you get off the ferry. We can look forward to those every year and thrill the same way Wordsworth did. Again, spring with the species daffodil, species tulips, peonies, iris. I call this the root beer iris because of its color. I have no idea what species it is because somebody gave it to me. This is a David Austin rose. I think it was named after it's Pat Austin. It's very floriferous. I got it at Costco 18 years ago, but I've never since seen David Austin roses at Costco. It was like a 3-pack for, $30 or something. This species, I don't know, because I'm not a very good record keeper. Garden, this is the Pat Austin, over a propane tank. It hasn't covered it, but it certainly makes it look like a vase. Lupin, the Oriental Poppy, Iris, Weigelia in the back. You can see it has a very natural feel, not particularly planned. A beautiful just field poppy. I think this orange poppy is related to the Welsh poppy. I don't know the species. I know I got it at Lorna's maybe 6 years ago, but similar to the Welsh poppy. And there's a great deal of movement in those poppies with if there's any kind of wind, and columbine. A very beautiful clematis, but I'm not sure what species. I know the species if I've memorized it, but I don't memorize everything. The wonderful, I call them rabbit ear lavender, but a Spanish lavender with love and a mist, which reseeds itself, so you only have to plant it once. These white columbines just appeared in my garden. I've noticed that if you sprinkle columbine seed, like a mixture, they start hybridizing themselves. And I have no idea where this white came from. It wasn't in the mixture. Sweet peas again, and the Shasta daisies. Allium, just a marvelous. This is the Christophe allium, which is a larger one that looks like a starburst, I think. And below, I believe that's the Johnson's blue perennial geranium. Lilies, again with the Shasta daisies, just for the scent to walk through your garden. and those are the trumpet lilies. Here poppies. 4th of July, my garden, the house that my son's in, always comes out with red, white, and blue, which is accidental. So those are echinops that I know I got from Irmgard, probably 10, 12 years ago. And they spread too. You might want to keep an eye on them if you have them in your garden. This is cardoon, which is a relative, the tall plant in the middle, a relative to the artichoke, and marvelously sculptural in the garden. And so this would have been quite early. I had blue oak grass, but I did not find that it lasted very long for me. So I have not planted it yet. Again, but I do love the look of it. Geraniums, the perennial geraniums, pink and blue. The volunteer foxglove, they are not a local native, but they've certainly nativized themselves. Yarrow and just the California poppy, and it looks like a little lamb's ear up here in the upper left, and Nepeta, the catmint. And these, I think they're helianthum, the yellow flowers I got from Emily Reed very early when I came here. They bloom later in summer, and I just love them, but they're quite spreading. And verbena that just seeded itself, but how sculptural, the tall plants with the yellow, and just a mixture of everything that I love. Later in summer, the beautiful Japanese anemone on the left, which also comes in a gorgeous white, and the echinops. And asters, I think I got that aster from George Orser, and I noticed that he's on the tour again this year, and also he's at the Saturday market, I believe. Just a wonderful aster for fall bloom. And that would probably be the aster. And I don't know what aster it is. I don't even know if George knows. With echinacea. And a different aster. I did dig up a wild aster that I found was very, very invasive, wanted to take over the garden. So I would not recommend that. And just the those are the whoops, go back there. Those are the echinops as they're fading, but I like to leave them because the birds like the seeds, and I think they're also rather lovely. The view of the garden through the Catinas, and my son and his family moved from Ventura County, California, and brought along cactuses, and Callie, my son's partner, set a cactus outside, and it bloomed this summer. So, wasn't that a thrill? Find or make garden decorations that express you, no matter how weird or wacky. If you're not weird or wacky, don't worry. Just just do what makes you happy. But if you are weird or wacky and you're a little nervous about expressing that, go for it. This is a wonderful welcome friends sign I got in Laredo, Mexico, with Baja license plates. And oh my gosh, license plate, crab, buoys, old garden tools, an old chair, old wheelbarrows. Used to be able to get this kind of stuff easily at the exchange, but now it's a little more curated. Yeah, that's a bit of a loss. And there are other people that are after rusty stuff too. These, I worked for Kenmore Air for 10 years, and these have something to do with airplanes. And I found them sitting outside of the biplane hangar and drug them home. But you know, anything can be a planter, pretty much. These springs, and I like the visual play, you know, springs in a spring garden, were from Bob Egan. I found out that he had a lot of rusty stuff, so made a visit to his place and got a nice haul. I don't know if he still has rusty stuff. And I think that buys came from Bob. I don't know where I got the tractor seats, but old galvanized tubs. And these at the bottom are tufa that I made. I'm gonna do some more tufa. It's a mixture, 1 part sand, 1 part peat moss, and 1 part cement. And then you can just mold it like clay inside of whatever shape container, you know, a sink or a pot or a cardboard box that you've lined with plastic. Really fun to do. Like mix those 3 in your wheelbarrow and then make pots. And there's lots of recipes for it online. This rusty roll of wire was by the side of the road, heading to Deer Harbor. And thought, well, that would make a neat sculpture. You can't do this with every garden. You kind of have to have a funky kind of, if you have a more formal garden, just forget all this part. Think of it as entertainment. But for collectors of funky stuff, and I don't know where I got that wheel, whatever you call it, that just appeared, I think. And, you know, I think people drop things off. I don't know about it. But anyway, that looks good there. One of my favorite garden decorations is laundry. I'm very sad that we don't hang clothes on the line anymore, because it's wonderful for the clothes, sanitizes them. It looks so pretty, and just the ritual of carrying the basket outside and standing under the sky and listening to the birds, and even I would suggest that it's a physical meditation, you know, the bending down and the lifting up and the bending down and the lifting up, is for me almost like prayer, to do that ritual. And it's really fun when your grandkids come visit and you've got little baby clothes on the line. So precious. And this is a clothesline in Croatia. When we were, I kind of started a collection, although I don't think it would be appropriate collection for the garden club, of clothesline pictures from around the world. But you can see how in the absence of flowers, it looks like there's an old refrigerator over there, but you know, it's just pretty. And this is Dylan Thomas's cottage in South Wales. which I was so thrilled to visit 2 years ago. And they had a clothesline out. I don't know if those were his shirts, I kind of doubt it, but, he and, Caitlin, his partner, wife, must have hung clothes from those trees, so they recreated that. It was very thrilling to be there. And if you don't have clothes, fly flags. This is our Emmanuel Episcopal Church. And there's always a wonderful group of flags on the flagpole. It's a mast off the sailboat. Other found materials, if you have bamboo in your garden, which I don't recommend, but the stems make marvelous garden posts. And old watering cans make good pots. This is in France, where I often saw old bicycles with planters. Another bicycle in France with baskets and other pots hanging, just so charming. This is in Eastern England, very small village called Staith, Staith. And you can see there's garbage cans and life rings, but there's also a garden. And here more garbage cans, but a garden. And I love this. This was on the north coast of Scotland. This is some kind of lacquer, gilded pink paint that someone had done to their furniture. And if you don't have a garden, paint one. This is in Staith. And this is the epitome of Scotland to me. All over the British Isles are abandoned phone booths, some of them stuffed with the most interesting things, but a sheep, an old phone booth, and rock. This is the little garden hut in the back of my property on Lover's Lane that my son's in. But just the simplicity of being able to see a bed and a quilt and a flower box. This is the wonderful ferry landing at Shaw Island. It's worth it just to go for the beautiful boxes on the ramp. Mexico, you can see hearts up there. My heart leaps thinking about Mexico and the wonderful, joyful gardening that happens there. And this is in the city of Guanajuato, which is about 3 hours east of Guadalajara. Very much a colonial city, dating from the 1600s, because of the nearby silver mines, of course, built on mined on the backs of the natives, but a beautiful city nonetheless. And the colors, just the colors and the joyfulness in the flowers. Looking down the street, and you can see all the balconies with flowers. And this was just kind of a wreck of a building, but look up at the top where, again, just pots of flowers and the wonderful colors. This is near Loretto. Look at the teeth on the top. Just such charming things. Danger, the ass bites, muerte is bite as well. And this was the donkey that I ran into, who doesn't bite, but did try to get in the car when I handed him a carrot. Again, Mexico, San Miguel de Allende, all the pots and just putting plants that one loves. And this is actually in Anacortes. I can't remember what street, but have some of you seen that?
It's next to Pelican Bay.
Yeah, I just like, well, let's put a whole bunch of blue bottles on a tree branch. It's so charming. I was thrilled by all the little window scenes in England. I don't remember what town this is, but just all the little favorite things. A little hedgehog there at the bottom and a poppy seed pod, geraniums. Again, more sedums. I don't know what's in that picture, but these were 3 windows right next to each other. So there's many places we can garden. This is also in England. This was near Blenheim Palace. And look at the joy of every Christmas ornament that perhaps has been collected throughout a life. And there's a little white tree to the right of the Christmas tree. I'm not sure if that's a tree over on the left too. Invite your friends and family and strangers into your garden so they can be joyful too. I think it's so important to share. This is a square in Guanajuato with a little girl in her rainbow sweats, feeding pigeons, and she was actually a pigeon whisperer. She was able to catch them by their tails. But you know, they trusted her. And again, in the square, around the garden of the square, school kids at lunch, and more pigeons, and a little elementary school band with trumpets and drums. And this, we passed this young boy who was mimicking, you can see the statue to his right, and he was thrilled for me to take his picture. And in Mexico, they even decorate the dogs. Isn't that precious? And pigeons. One of them pooped on me. And here we are at Orcas with wild turkeys. Do you know that the range of the wild turkeys is very limited? So we are so lucky to have them here. When I was driving to town this morning, I passed a hen turkey with half a dozen babies following them. So that was, if they were just leaving the road, otherwise I would have gotten a picture. This is Mr. Mallard, next door to my neighbor Carol Boring's pond. For a while I had chickens, and this is the rooster perched on the wheelbarrow. This is my son, just this spring at Lawn Farm, getting a little baby lamb kiss. This was just a couple weeks ago. They at the Shaw Ferry Landing, and you can see they just put out the boxes. But so chill. Yeah, I didn't realize there are 2 cats there at the ferry landing that have residents. And these are my grandchildren. And you know, just hanging out in the middle of the road, waiting for the ferry and the flowers in the background. This is me with Highland sheep, Highland cows, on Skye. We were driving, I hadn't seen any of the Highland cows. So when we, up until this moment, and so we stopped, and the farmer across the road came over and very graciously gave me some grain to feed the cattle. And then this guy came wandering out, or these sheep. This is Stadium Bowl in Tacoma. Stadium High School in Tacoma was at one time a castle. And their football stadium is above the water, right next to the high school. And they use goats to keep the hillside from growing out of control. And of course, we all have little green frogs in our gardens. Yeah. And we can invite you, if you're old enough, your grandchildren into your garden who'd love to help. This is my granddaughter Grace, who's now 10. And this is a little, I don't know if that's a chipmunk or a squirrel that Grace found dead at her property on Salmon Beach, which is a little beach community in Tacoma. And she gave it a really lovely burial with velvet and flowers. And so even if you find dead things in your garden, you can celebrate their lives. If I had the whole picture here, you'd see my little grandson, who's now 5, naked, exploring the garden. So all these people and critters who can share in your joy. I just have a little epilogue. Don't know how we are by time here. Because my son and his family needed housing, they're in my house. And so I moved in with my partner in Olympia a year ago, May, but I just missed Orcas so much. It was horrible for me that he and I bought a new property just a mile, 1.6 miles east of the ferry landing, turning right off the ferry on Moss Hill. And I'm going to share a little bit about that. This is the view from the property. And that's Nora, my partner. Pulling Scotch broom, I think. South-southwest, right over American Camp on San Juan Island, and all the way to the Olympics. And I saw that, and I dug my claws in. He said, "Margaret, you're going to go into debt." And I said, "I don't care." So now at 78, I have 2 mortgages. So don't come to me for financial planning. And what I discovered on this property is that it's a native and natural meadow, which made me think of Emily Dickinson's beautiful poem, "To Make a Prairie." To make a prairie, it takes a clover and 1 bee, 1 clover and a bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. So our job is to just love and admire what we are given for nature. What I discovered on this hillside was that it's covered with native wildflowers. In April, the camassia and the death camas and fritillaria. You can see the brown checker lily. It's, if you don't know what you're looking for, but when I found those fritillarias, I fell on my knees. This is in the saxifrage family. I remember the name of it. Sea blush. The hillside at Moss Hill is just a little bit of topsoil over pretty much solid rock. So very different habitat than I'm used to, but I'm finding myself becoming a steward. I'm not gardening at all. I'm just looking in awe. This is the sea blush up close. This is the native buttercup, the western buttercup with Camasia. This, I can't remember the name of this one. I've looked them all up, but I haven't memorized them yet. This is a coral root. You can see the it's a member of the orchid family. So every day, just new thrills on that hillside. The native yarrow, and this is what I sing to myself in the Tom Petty. You belong among the wildflowers. So, you know, just, so these are the books that I'm really consulting now, Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest. These are part of the cover got cut off, but Native Plants of the Northwest Coast, a wonderful book published by these organizations, including San Juan County Land Bank, that I found is just an excellent resource for stewarding prairie and meadow landscapes. And our wonderful Salish Seeds project that has information on planting and maintaining native plant gardens, and you can purchase from them. So I've been in contact with Tanya Williamson and Eliza Haybaker. I'm not sure about how to pronounce her name. Just Haybaker. So wonderful resources, and Eliza is planning, I think, to do a native plant workshop in the fall on orchis. So just incredible resources. I never expected at this age to move into a whole different kind of gardening. This is Christina's World, painted by American artist Andrew Wyeth. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. The story behind Christina is that she had a muscular issue which left her crippled, but she refused to use a wheelchair, so she crawled every place. And I can tell you from crawling all over that hillside that we purchased in December, that that's just an exquisite way to learn a landscape. The reason I've been crawling around the landscape is I'm pulling a Scotch broom. But just to be that close to have your fingers in quite literally the hair of the landscape is marvelous. So I have a whole new, I mean, I always loved this painting, but I have a whole new appreciation for it. That's just a little bit more about it. And rock hauling, Norm's rigged up this because I've been flying a few glacial erratics off the hillside for the garden. And there was this, I think it's part of a buoy that was up on the hillside, and Norm was gonna haul it to the dump. And I'm, no, you're not doing that. It could be a beautiful planetary. Which a poem I've always loved by Wallace Stephen. I placed a jar in Tennessee, and round it was upon a hill. It made the slovenly wilderness surround that hill. That should be made rather than made. I don't like slovenly with wilderness, but just one piece of sculpture can make a difference. This little patio is already there. So I'm turning that into a Japanese garden. This is the patio, seen from the porch. Almost done here. But still buying plants. Thank you for your good company. May your gardening be joyful.